Hello everybody, I'm here for another poorly filmed video. As you can see, one of the barn cats, Snowflake, is checking out the bucket of hot water I have ready. This video is going to be on hardening and tempering steel. So I've finished forging a Flint steel striker for a customer. In fact, it's still cold from the annealing process, so I'm going to show it to you. I got it hot and then I let it slowly cool in a bucket of ash. Then I got it hot and let it slowly cool in a bucket of ash. All this is to de-stress the blade. I've heard some people say you only have to do it once and that doing it 3 times was an old time thing before we understood the science, but I just follow the old teachings. But here it is. If I can get it to focus well on it. That is a Flint and Steel Striker all. I'm intending for you to kind of pinch it like this, or especially put a piece of cord so you can lay the cord in your hand, pinch it, and then strike against a flint and steel, or against a piece of flint for your flint and steel kit, or up like this so that you're not bringing the point towards you, and again striking down across the steel. Imagine that's the flint. Across like that will get you the sparks. So that's what I'm tempering today. The last time I annealed, I got it nice and hot. You don't want it at its absolute maximum heat. You want it at or a little below the temperature that you're actually going to harden it at. All the exact numbers and everything, I'll be honest, I don't remember numbers. I go by colors. I do a lot of stuff really old-fashioned, but yep, that's what we're working with today. I'm going to do my best to put it in the forge so that that tip heats up slower than the rest, because I don't want it to be too hard and crack or warp. And then quench it hard in the middle, and then I'm going to temper it back just a little so it's less fragile. So I've already rambled enough. I should point out that the bucket you're looking at is full of hot water already. The cats knocked it over. No worries there, but they gave me the opportunity. Since the water was already knocked over, I brought it inside and filled it up from a hot water spigot rather than filling it up from the cold well water like I normally do. So this process will be sped up a lot by that. I don't have to work so hard to heat up the piece. Now that's done with, next thing is I'm going to grab railroad spike. I bought it legally. You know, a lot of people freak out about how you can't legally have railroad spikes. I got this legally. I ordered it professionally. As you can see, it's damaged. It came damaged. I just use it to heat up in the forge and set in my water to keep it hot. So, things are about to get loud in here. If I think about it, I'll give you a timestamp on when to skip if you're just interested in the explanation. But I use propane gas, so I just turned the gas on. And now I need something to throw in there. I've just got some old packing paper. Just trash, basically, but, you know, just paper. And I just kind of wad it up, light it, and throw it in. I would show more of my forge, but this isn't my barn, and it's quite messy in here. Here we go. Might be noisy. Well, that was a dud. It blew out the ember. It blew out the flame. Starting to see why I stick to the plant videos, but you guys seem to like the smithing quite a bit. I don't blame you. This is my dream job. The farming is a close second, but all my life I've wanted to really make it as a smith. Here we go. I just had to stop telling you guys the noise was coming. Once I stopped saying anything, it's been all good, I guess. I guess it's because of because the temperature is different here. It's getting pretty cold. The actual fire coming out was way different than I normally experience. Yeah, what I'm doing right now, the actual forging piece is not in the forge. It's sitting just far enough away it can warm up. I mean it's far enough away I can leave my hand there. So it's warm, but it's not hot by any means. My hand's sitting right over it. It's not burning my hand. So it's coming up to heat very slowly right now. But once you're actually putting it in real heat, you want to heat it fast. The longer it sits heating up slow, this is true for knife tempering as well. The longer it takes to get up to heat, the longer it sits at heat, the steel itself has a structure to it. I don't know how well my hands are visible here. There we go. The material has a structure to it, and it's a crystal structure. The longer it sits at a high heat, the bigger and bigger those crystals get. That makes it brittle. If you actually take one of these blades or one of these tools and you do two side by side the exact same shape, and you make them both, you harden them both, and before tempering you put them over the edge of the anvil and you just whack them off, you'll be able to actually see a quickly brought to heat and then hardened blade has a smooth texture, and a blade that sat and got hot slowly and over time has really big, like sandpaper texture. So it's a visible difference in the inside of the steel. So what I do first is I let that thing come up to a warm temperature before I put it in, but I actually will let the forge itself get hot. Because when it's getting hot, I want it to get hot fast. Just for a show of how the temperature is going right now, you can see just a little bit of glow on that smushed edge on that railroad spike. So it's hot in there, but it's not all that hot. Quench that off to get that water a little warmer. And I throw that whole thing back in. Before anyone asks, if I ever make a railroad spike knife for somebody, I'm not going to use the one that goes in and out of the forge all the time. This steel is incredibly stressed and just beat up from the constant quenching. Constant quenching is not good for your steel. So I would never make a knife out of that at this point. The only thing I use that steel for is to heat up this bucket. I'm starting to see the inside of my forge is starting to glow hot. I use a propane forge. It's kind of a rectangular shape. Bought it off Amazon. It's cheap, but it works real well. And once I can start to see it actually getting nice glowing red hot, that's when I know that it's getting up to a temperature I can start putting things in. My actual quench tank here is starting to get kind of steamy. It's cold out, so it's going to get steamy before it's actually boiling, but I'm quite confident at this point if I just drop that big chunk of metal in, it will be boiling, and you want it boiling or close to it to be tempering things like W-1. For those of you wondering why I temper in water, people say all the time you can't temper in water because they only watch Forged in Fire and they don't really know a lot about bladesmithing. Of course, a lot of these same people will talk about how great the katana was. The katana was always water tempered historically. The whole water tempering thing, it does carry risk with it. But if you know what you're doing, you're using the right steels and the right techniques, your chances of a failure with it are quite low. When I put this in there, this piece of steel, when this goes in, it's going into hot water, which lowers the viscosity. It also forms a vapor jacket where bubbles will form on the actual piece. Those bubbles float away faster when it's hotter. The other thing is when I quench it, I'm going to hold on to this tip to try to give it some extra mass so it doesn't get quenched as hard, because I'm not trying to use that tip for sparking. Most of the strike is going to be on that big curve. So this is going to go in the water loop first, and I'm going to rapidly and aggressively stab. Just stab, 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 stab. And that is going to break up that vapor jacket, that steam jacket around it, and force it to much more consistently cool to an acceptable temperature. So those combined really help make a difference. There are other ways to do water quenching. This isn't the only one. These are the ways that I do it. This is what I'm familiar with. It's also worth mentioning the steel I use for pretty much all of my blades and all of my flint strikers is W-1. W-1 means water hardened, 1. Formula 1. Here you can see this is nice and glowing hot. I'm going to create a vortex, or in simpler terms, I'm just going to stir it until it spins. And I just set my piece in the actual forge to get hot. So I've got my water spinning, and I'm just going to drop that big piece right in there. Now that spinning water isn't totally necessary, but it helps. Now the next trick, I won't be able to move the camera around effectively to show you, but once my piece is at the necessary heat, it becomes non-magnetic. Now I hear all the time that the only thing you've got to do is bring things to the point of non-magnetic and then quench them. That's not true of every steel, but a lot of the simpler, more old-fashioned steels, and pretty much any handmade steel, like Tamahagani and other completely primitive or traditional steels, that is quite true. Right here, here's my piece. The loop does not stick to my magnet, so the loop is good, but a little bit of the belly did. So I'm going to put it back in for just a second, get it real hot. And here we go, quenching. A lot of people say it's best to be absolutely straight up and down. I find straight up and down makes me move slower. So I go at an angle. I've never really had a problem with it. Alright. It's now cool enough to touch. Of course, it's very hot. Still as hot as hot water. Hot, boiling water. But from here, I can take any piece of hard steel. Don't know how well you can hear that, but it skates steel pretty good. Let me look for a second opinion, but for now I don't need that on. Well, guys, sorry for the silence, but this is not my property. This is my parents', and it appears my dad has had a need for the file because I don't have the file next to me. But I did have another piece of hardened steel I quenched for a different project, and it's skate steel. So that basically is my confirmation. If it'll skate steel, yeah, I don't know how well you can hear it. This is a hardened marlin spike. It skates. It doesn't cut. I've got a hard 90 degree on that marlin spike. It's not really a marlin spike. It's more of an awl. Marlin spike should be round. But yeah, that skates steel. So that hardened. And the hardness helps you shear off metal to make that spark. So it's hardened now. But if I just leave it like this, it's more likely to just snap the moment it gets stressed. So the next way to handle this is either my preferred method, which is a toaster oven. You can put it in a toaster oven and simply let it sit there at, everyone has a different preferred temp, but for me in a fire steel, I go about 300 to 350 for 30 minutes. You have a choice of whatever preference and time you like, but that's the preferred method I usually use. Now I have a secondary method that's more traditional. I'm not going to do this fully because it's a customer's item, but I'm going to show you how it works just to make life easier on you. So I'm going to pause and make a cut, and I'll be right back. All right, everybody, I'm back. I'd like to once again apologize for the mess. But this method, like I said, I'm not going to actually do the entire process this way because I'd prefer not to for a customer. But this forge, while it doesn't glow anymore, I just finished filming. This is still several hundred degrees. I could now take this piece and set it like so. This piece is different than certain others. Here, I've got a flashlight to give you a better view. This one's got a thin tip, so I'm going to leave the tip out, otherwise it'll get hot too fast. And you can sort of see the thicker piece is more towards where the heat would be, and traditionally this was done to temper things. You could polish the face and really get a good view of the heat. When things start to turn yellow on the polished parts, then you're hitting about 300, and the deeper the yellow, you're getting 300, 400 when it starts to get really yellow, 450 when it's starting to get kind of gold. And then once you get in around 500, it'll start to turn purple, blue, and then purple. Those are great steels for blades that take a lot of abuse, but to me, those temperatures are already too soft for a flint and steel striker. I would never try to temper a flint and steel striker beyond 400 at absolute max. And 400 is a good temperature for most knife tempering as well. Small knives that aren't going to be chopping and smashed around a whole lot. So, just think about what you're doing, learn your temps and everything. I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, take this out, temper it the rest of the way that I normally do. But I thank you all very much for watching. Right now this is hot enough that I can't touch it with my hands just from that time in there. So the tempering process is happening a little bit. I don't need any hardness left in the loop. So I'm okay if the loop lost all its hardness. That's not the striking part. But, yep. Hopefully you learned something useful, and I will see you all in the next video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys. Goodbye, everybody.